Hello, hello everybody. I'm Dimitris, and I'm doing those live sessions. Hopefully, there are gonna be a lot of them to make sure that we can have some performant websites using Joomla. Uh, okay, so first of all, I have no clue if this works. So. Right. Okay, so first of all, the things that you're gonna need to follow along is a web server. If you're using Windows, probably you want to use something like XAMPP or WAMP. For Mac, the usual suspect is MAM. If you're using Linux, there is again XAMPP, XAMPP or something like that. Anyway, these are pretty standard tools. All they do is provide you with a local environment, so you can have your website and actually do anything programming side. So what I've did here already is that I downloaded the latest Joomla. And I'm gonna just copy it over to the place that it needs to be. So this is the folder. We paste here this, we extract it. This is pretty normal if you're doing any kind of freelancing or any developing. This is pretty normal. There's nothing really weird on what I'm doing here. Let's move this. So okay, and my server used to be like that. So if I press enter, Joomla kicks in, and we can have, let's say, live session, website with some email. This is pretty normal. It's the usual steps to set up Joomla. I'm not doing anything weird here. So let's, okay, interesting. So let's install Joomla first of all to have our base so we can talk on some real things. Oops, this is not gonna work. I'm gonna install the normal. Okay, so sorry, so long you couldn't follow along because I forgot to switch the screen. So all I did is just start up the installation of Joomla, and I'm gonna just have the log sample data as well. So it's pretty normal procedure to set up the Joomla. So we're removing the folder and we get to our website. So this is what you get out of the installation from Joomla 3.88. I'm using Chrome Canary, you need to download this because it's the latest version of Chrome. Just type into Google Chrome Canary and go and download it. It's the same version. It's almost the same as the usual Chrome, but the thing is that it's the latest version, and it's cutting edge, and it has some features that are not available in the normal installation of Chrome, at least yet. So the good thing with Chrome Canary and Chrome is that they have this tab in the console, which is called Audits, and you can go and audit your website to see how it performs. There are different options here, what you can audit and how it's gonna be done. In all of this series, we're gonna be talking about mobile, and we're basically interested about performance, progressive web apps, and best practices. Not too much about accessibility or SEO. This is different topics. I will not go into those. Also, you want to make sure that the throttling is always on simulated fast 3G, and that you have a 4 times CPU slowdown to try and make sure that what you're comparing is the median mobile device that most of your users are gonna use when they visit your website. So without further ado, let's do an audit and see how Joomla is performing out of the box. Right. So as you see, there are some scores and some scales here. It says 0 to 44 is really bad. 45 to 74, it's not good. It's, let's say, the medium. And over 75, it considers as a good website. So out of the box, performance-wise, Joomla is not doing great. It's pretty good on accessibility. Best practices, it's not that bad, because basically if we scroll down and we see what's all the best practices that is marking as not best practices, is basically things that are here due to the local host environment. So if you have, let's say, this website posted in any server, then you will probably use HTTPS, that's secure, and probably HTTP2 as well, which is the new protocol which enables more transfers instead of HTTP1. Now, this thing about JavaScript libraries is something that we already took care of it in, and it's gonna be in Joomla 3.8.9, I think. So basically, yeah, best practices is not something that we should consider here, because this is, let's say, false alerts. But yeah, if we go on performance, the interesting thing is that the first contentful paint is over 4 seconds. What does this mean? This means that in order to get something, no, let me put it in another way. From the time that somebody is writing the URL and hitting enter, or hitting a URL in another website that points to this website, it will need 4.2 seconds to get something in the screen. So it's 4.2 seconds that nothing is happening in the screen. It's totally blank, empty screen for 4.2 seconds. And then after 4.2 seconds, you have another 200 milliseconds, and then at 4.5, let's say 4.48, everything comes up like boom. This is not a great experience. It's far from ideal. So how can we how can you make this a little bit better? Okay, so let's switch back to here. I'm gonna use Node. Node is an IDE from Microsoft. You can go code. It's VS Code. It's Visual Studio Code. It's from Microsoft. It's free. It has a ton of plugins for PHP, JavaScript, anything that you want to do. But the good point is that it's free and it's quite fast. So we're going to use this one. So out of the box, Joomla is coming with two templates. The default is called Protostar. And actually, this is the page, the index.php, that it's responsible for all the rendering and for all the painting that is happening in your browser. So let's do this. So let's remove all CSS and JavaScript from our page for a minute and go back. Yeah, this is not ideal because this looks like not a very well designed website. But yeah, just for measurement and figuring out what is the bottleneck here, we're gonna run this website to see how it performs without CSS and JavaScript. Wow, and the difference is quite interesting. So we have the first contentful paint at half a second on 500 milliseconds, and first meaningful paint 80 milliseconds later, that's less than 600 milliseconds. And the total time that it takes to complete the page, that's JavaScript and everything, is under 1 second, 800 milliseconds. So obviously something is terribly wrong on how we're doing things in this template, because we just figure out that the bottleneck is the CSS and the JavaScript. So let's figure out if we can drill down a little bit and see if we can see how much each of these things is costing. So there is this block which it loads the Google font, right? So I just comment it out. That means I just removed it. And this is the normal CSS for the template. So again, it's going to be the same thing, but this time I refresh the page. It's going to be the same, but this time the page has all the JavaScript. It's only missing the CSS. Actually, it's missing part of the CSS. So let's see how this works out. Right, so JavaScript costs us around 2.200 milliseconds. And that's not good. Okay, so let's go back again. So let's have the CSS. Actually, no, let's not have the CSS. Let's remove also some JavaScript. Or maybe let's do another experiment. So this, at this point, everything is loaded in almost on the very top of the page. So what will happen if, okay, this is not to be done like that, but I just took this line of code and I put it instead of head in the bottom. I'm gonna just undo the muting here. I'm gonna just have also the CSS, and let's run this again. Okay, so this looks nice. The website is still up and running, and probably it should be working. Everything should be working, actually. Yes, it's working. So, right, let's see how this performs. So right now we took everything from the head of the document and we put it just below the closing bracket of the document. And well, that's a bit of improvement. So we ended up having from 4.5 seconds to 2.3 for the first meaningful paint, for the first contentful paint, and the first meaningful is 200 milliseconds later. But the good thing is that only by delegating all the scripts and CSS from the top of the page to the bottom of the page, we already went to -2 seconds. That's interesting. But yeah, let's do a little bit more here. So there is one nice. So in Chrome you can have many many plugins. Let me just figure out. Okay, maybe that was, yeah, okay. Right, so you can have one plugin. Unfortunately, I have it installed on the other installation of Chrome. So let's go to normal Chrome. Yeah, sorry about that. Right, so in Chrome you can have extensions, and one nice extension that's interesting is this this one called CSS used. So CSS used, what it's doing is reading the HTML of the page. Actually, what it's doing is actually reading this part, right, the HTML. And then it reads also the CSS that it was provided, and it comes out with which CSS is being used. So okay, let's do something interesting here. Let's create a new file. I'm gonna call it template2.css, and we're gonna paste this in. I'm gonna save this file. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna remove the Google font, and instead of having the font like the styles like this, I'm gonna do something interesting here. I'm gonna say path only, which is true. Right, so this time this line, instead of inserting an HTML a link tag, it's gonna just return the path for this file. And I'm gonna put this into a variable. Let's call it CSS. CSS path maybe. Right, and then what I'm gonna do is say another variable CSS is equal to file get contents, which is gonna be jpath, path root Right, so this should be our CSS, and then let's go, where's the head? Let's go in the head and say style now. Hopefully, if I did it correctly, it should be okay. Right, so it's not exactly as it was before the website, but okay, I'm gonna switch back now to Chrome Canary. So we're using the same browser just to make sure that the results are comparable. Right, so I'm gonna run again this audit. Now, what we did is that we inline the CSS in the document, and wow, that's down to 1.1 second, 1.4 for complete rendering. Right, so this might be interesting, but you cannot go into each page and get the CSS with Chrome and then somehow put it in a file and then get the file into the template. This is not gonna work. It's not gonna work because Joomla is very dynamic. It's the nature of the platform, to be dynamic. So this idea, although it's great, it cannot work because just fair enough, it's just for static, it's not for dynamic pages. So we have to come up with a solution that we have some goodness of the inline style sheets, we have the goodness of moving the scripts to the bottom, and then we should be good to have over 90% to all of our websites. Right, at least that's the idea, because unfortunately we're not in an ideal world, and the problem is that if people, and by people I mean developers, are not developing following the Joomla standards, then we have problems, because whatever we do here, maybe it breaks somebody else's code or extension, plugin, module, whatever. So what are the minimum prerequisites in this case to have this as a viable solution for Joomla? So the first thing is that you shouldn't have any tags like script inside your document. And this is not exactly true. It's not that you can have something which doesn't depend on something, because if I do something here which is plain JavaScript and is let's say document dot so this is the equivalent of jQuery.ready, jQuery document.ready. So yeah, let's just to prove that this is working for normal things. I'm gonna let's do this. So I get element by ID, and the ID is gonna be footer, and then I'm gonna say style display equals none. So what this thing is gonna do is it's gonna wait for the document to load, and after the document's loaded, it's gonna search for this footer, and it's gonna just hide it, right? So let's just check if this actually works. Oops. Is this the footer? Right. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right, and as you see, there is no footer anymore. So if I just rerun the page, and yes, the footer is there. So basically, yeah, if you have code that it's not depending on jQuery, it's gonna load. Now, if I do this line, this code on the jQuery, let's say jQuery document, all that is called ready, I think, and then you have just the function, right? So if I try to run it, yeah. The problem is that jQuery is not defined. And why it's not defined? It's not defined because jQuery is defined here. And we try to run this code here. So we're calling jQuery at the point that the DOM doesn't know what jQuery means. So And this is very important. Basically, people should not do these things. You should not actually put script tags, never ever, in your Joomla. For that thing, there is always this nice API from Joomla, which is what's it? Yeah, it's a factory. Get document. Add script declaration. And what you can do with this is that you can say, I want to add a script tag, and the script tag can be, let's say, this one. Okay, that's not gonna work. Let's try this one. And yeah, I'm gonna remove this. So basically, okay, we need this, and also we need this. Okay, so hopefully it's gonna work. Yeah, so you see, you still don't have the footer. That means that the script actually ran. But the good part is that we did it through the API, and this is the most important part. And this is the most important part for all developers, that they have to follow the API. Joomla is not doing all this API documentation, etc., just for nothing. If everybody follows the documentation, the API, then we have a pretty nice solution that works for everybody. I mean, we have a better platform for everybody. Nobody breaks other people's code, etc., etc. This is the most important part that I want to point out here, is that you should always doing things with the API. Don't try, there are people that, and this is really, really bad, there are people that instead of using the JHTML, which is the usual, the normal way to insert either style, CSS file or a script, you just call JHTML script or style sheet, and you load it either as relative with a version. There are a gazillion of options that you can use with these commands. So there are people that they go completely nuts, and instead of doing this, I've seen very popular extensions in the Joomla extension directory, that instead of following this very simple and very elegant solution, is that they are actually doing add custom tags. And yeah, this is also an API, but this API was never meant to be like do scripts and style sheets through that. It's just for some unsupported tags that, in case Joomla couldn't follow the revolution, there is just for that. But for style sheets and scripts, you should always use the JHTML. And yeah, as I say, very popular extensions, they're using the add custom script, which add custom tag, which is definitely not the way, because if you do that, then it means that the style sheet and the scripts are not into the array that all the other scripts and style sheets are. And that means that if a front-end developer like me wants to do something and say, you know what, I don't want this script to run, I will want to have my own script. This is impossible. And that is the problem. So as a first session, so what you need to take out of this is that out of the box, Joomla is not performant due to Bootstrap and jQuery, and basically because we're loading everything in the head of the document. But also to defend Joomla, we cannot put everything in the places that needs to be placed for performance unless people start and follow very closely the API. If people still doing things like add custom tags and scripts with jQuery inside the document of a module or a component or whatever, yeah, Joomla will never be able to do anything good performance-wise. So this is very important. I wanted to point out that if you see people, most probably whoever is watching this, you already have installed a lot of extensions, plugins, etc., etc. So what is good is you can go and check how things are done, and if people are not doing things like the normal way with HTML, you should just poke the developer and say, hey, can you please follow the API, the Joomla API, instead of doing it your own way. And then we can have the goodness in Joomla. Otherwise, this cannot be happen ever. All right, so as I say, this was only to this session was only about figuring out how to do an audit in your website, not actually doing some coding in this session. So I just want to show you that there are ways that you can manage to get around and get your website at a very, very performant way. Hitting over 90 is not something very hard. But as I say, as a first thing that you should get out of this session is that you should always check your extensions, whatever you download and install on all your websites, and check to see if the developers are doing what they're supposed to do with the API, or if they're doing it their own way, then probably you should just nag them and say, hey, can you please follow the rules? Don't do it your way. It's not good. I cannot do my stuff. Right. So I also showcased how this is gonna end up, because along the lines, yeah, most probably it's not gonna be with too much extensions from Chrome or whatever, but the whole idea is that we're gonna do a template, probably based on Protostar, but maybe we can take one template if anybody is kind enough to donate one out of the usual template soaps, and then make that template also very performant. Yeah, so okay, so the next session hopefully is gonna be by the same time next Monday. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do some coding and splitting the assets in a way that the browser can handle them in a better way. So, okay, right. So I'm gonna leave it here for now. This was all that I want to point out in this first session. Next one, as I said, it's gonna be like splitting of the assets. There is a queue if you're interested how that's gonna happen, etc., etc. There is something that you can check out and maybe figure out how this will be applied to Protostar. So if you go to Joomla in the GitHub, if you go to the Joomla repo, there is a branch for, and if you go to libraries, I think it's source, and then it's document, and then it's renderer, and then it's HTML. You see that we have this head renderer. This head renderer actually is this part that I was moving around. And the good part is that in Joomla 4 we have also metas, scripts, and styles. And yeah, I guess you understand where this is going, right? I'm gonna leave it here. So join me next Monday, and we're gonna